The blood on Violet's silk sleeve was not her own, but it might as well have been for how it marked her as property of the Silver Spur Saloon in Kingfisher, Oklahoma, and she scrubbed at the stain with trembling fingers while the sounds of revelry echoed through the floorboards beneath her feet. It was 1883, and she had been working in this establishment for 3 years, ever since her father's farm had failed and left her with nowhere else to turn. The other girls laughed and flirted and seemed content with their lot, but Violet lay awake every night staring at the water-stained ceiling, dreaming of a life where men looked at her as something more than a painted face and a willing smile. She was 22 years old and felt ancient, worn down by the grabbing hands and leering grins, the smell of whiskey and tobacco that clung to everything she owned. The stain would not come out no matter how hard she rubbed, just like the reputation she had earned simply by walking through those swinging doors every evening. Kingfisher was a growing town, full of cattlemen and cowboys driving herds up from Texas, and the Silver Spur was where they came to spend their wages after weeks on the trail. Violet had learned to paint her smile on as carefully as the rouge on her cheeks, but tonight the mask felt heavier than usual. A fight had broken out downstairs an hour ago, chairs smashing and bottles flying, and she had been caught in the middle of it when one drunk cowhand decided she was worth fighting over. The blood had sprayed across her sleeve when another man's fist connected with his nose, and she had fled upstairs while the owner, Samuel Crane, restored order with his shotgun and his cold, calculating threats. Now she sat in the small room she shared with 2 other girls, trying to make herself presentable again because the night was far from over. The door opened and Lily walked in, her blonde curls disheveled and her dress hanging off one shoulder. She took one look at Violet and sighed. "Still trying to get that out. Just throw the thing away and charge Crane for a new one. He owes us that much after tonight." Violet shook her head. "This is the nicest dress I own. I cannot afford another." Lily plopped down on the narrow bed they shared and began unlacing her boots. "You think too much, Vi. This is what it is. We get paid, we get fed, we got a roof over our heads. Could be worse." But Violet could not accept that this was as good as life could get. She had been educated briefly at a small school back in Missouri before her mother died. She could read and write and do figures, skills that were utterly wasted in the Silver Spur. "There has to be something else," she said quietly. "Some other kind of work." Lily laughed, not unkindly. "For girls like us, not in this town, honey. You made your choice when you walked through those doors, same as the rest of us." Violet set the dress aside, the stain still visible, a rusty brown mark that would never fully disappear. She had not made a choice, not really. She had been desperate and alone, and Samuel Crane had offered her employment when no one else would. She had not understood at first exactly what that employment would entail. By the time she realized, it was too late. Her reputation was ruined simply by association, and no respectable establishment would hire her now. She went back downstairs an hour later, wearing her second-best dress, a green silk that made her dark hair and pale skin look even more dramatic. The saloon was crowded, thick with smoke and noise, and she moved through the press of bodies with practiced ease, deflecting wandering hands and forced smiles. The piano player was banging out a lively tune, and several girls were dancing with customers, their laughter high and false. Violet made her way to the bar where Crane stood, his thick arms crossed over his barrel chest. He was a hard man, not cruel exactly, but utterly indifferent to anything beyond profit. "You ready to work?" he asked, his eyes sliding over her in assessment. "That mess earlier cost me 3 chairs and a mirror. Need to make it back somehow." "I am ready," she said, though her stomach churned at the thought of another night of pretending. He nodded toward a table in the corner. "Fellow over there asked for you specifically. Bought a bottle of the good stuff. Keep him happy." Violet followed his gesture and saw a man sitting alone, his hat pulled low over his face. He was tall, she could tell even seated, with broad shoulders and the weathered look of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. His clothes were dusty from travel but of good quality, and he held himself with a quiet confidence that set him apart from the usual rowdy crowd. She approached the table with her professional smile firmly in place. "Evening. I hear you asked for company." The man looked up, and Violet found herself staring into the most startling gray eyes she had ever seen. They were clear and direct, assessing her with an intelligence that made her suddenly self-conscious. He was handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble and sun-weathered skin that spoke of long days under the Oklahoma sky. He appeared to be in his late 20s, perhaps 30 at most. "Evening, miss," he said, and his voice was low and pleasant. "Name is Kieran Quade. I was hoping I might have a conversation with you, if you have the time." Violet slid into the chair across from him, surprised by his courtesy. Most men did not bother with names or pleasantries. "Violet Fairweather, what would you like to talk about?" He poured her a glass of whiskey from his bottle, though she noticed his own glass was barely touched. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Fairweather. A business proposition." Her heart sank. She had heard that before, and it always meant the same thing. "I am afraid you have the wrong idea about what kind of establishment this is, Mr. Quade." His eyebrows rose. "I think you have the wrong idea about my proposition. I am not looking for the services you provide here. I am looking for someone who can read, write, and keep accounts." "I was told you might be that person." Violet stared at him, convinced she had misheard. "I am sorry, what?" Kieran leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. "I run a cattle operation about 15 miles north of here. Got a good-sized herd and I am looking to expand. Problem is, I am not much good with paperwork and record-keeping. I need someone smart and reliable to handle the business side of things. Keep track of expenses, manage correspondence with buyers, that sort of thing. I was in here last week and saw you helping Crane with his books. You caught an error he had made in his figures. That is the kind of sharp thinking I need." She could not quite process what he was saying. "You want to hire me, to work with numbers and letters. That is exactly what I want. I can offer you $40 a month, plus room and board in a separate cabin on my property. Respectable work with respectable pay." His gray eyes were steady on hers. "I imagine you might want something different than what you have here." Violet felt something flutter in her chest, something she had not felt in years. Hope, but it was dangerous to hope. "Why would you do this? You do not know me. I know you can read and write and do figures, which is more than most folks out here. I know you work hard because I have seen you working. That is enough for me." He paused, then added quietly, "I also know you do not belong in a place like this. That is written all over your face if a man cares to look." She wanted to say yes immediately, to leap at this chance like a drowning woman grabbing for a rope, but years of disappointment had taught her caution. "What is the catch?" "There is always a catch." Kieran smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warmer. "No catch, Miss Fairweather. I need help. You need a new situation. Seems like it could work out for both of us. You would have your own space, your own privacy. I would expect you to work hard, but I would never expect anything beyond the job I am hiring you to do. You have my word on that." Violet looked around the saloon at the noise and smoke and grasping hands, then back at this stranger who was offering her a way out. "When would you need me to start?" "I am heading back tomorrow morning at first light. If you are coming with me, I will wait for you at the livery stable at dawn." He stood, leaving the bottle on the table. "Think about it tonight. If you are not there tomorrow, I will understand, but I hope you will be." He touched the brim of his hat in a gesture of respect that brought tears to Violet's eyes, because it had been so long since anyone had treated her with simple courtesy. Then he was gone, moving through the crowd and out into the night, leaving her sitting alone with a half-empty bottle and a decision that could change everything. Lily found her an hour later, still sitting at the same table. What did that cowboy want? He looked too serious for fun. "He offered me a job," Violet said, and her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "A real job, keeping books and managing correspondence for his cattle operation." Lily's eyes widened. "And you believe him?" "I do not know," Violet admitted, "but I think I have to find out." "I cannot stay here, Lily. I cannot do this anymore." Her friend's face softened. "Then you should go. If there is even a chance he is telling the truth, you should take it. You are different from the rest of us, Vi. You always have been." Violet went upstairs and packed her few belongings into a worn carpet bag. She owned almost nothing. 2 dresses, some undergarments, a brush, the book of poetry her mother had given her before she died. Everything she had in the world fit into one small bag, and that realization was both depressing and liberating. She had so little to lose. She did not sleep that night, afraid she would miss the dawn. Instead, she sat by the window watching the sky slowly lighten from black to gray to pink. When the first rays of sun touched the horizon, she picked up her bag and crept down the back stairs, avoiding the main room where a few late-night stragglers still drank and gambled. The morning air was cool and fresh after the stale atmosphere of the saloon, and Kingfisher was just beginning to wake up. A dog barked somewhere, and she could hear the clang of the blacksmith's hammer already starting. The livery stable was at the end of the main street, and her heart pounded as she walked toward it, half convinced that Kieran Quade would not be there, that the whole thing had been some kind of elaborate joke. But he was there, standing beside a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 horses. He looked up as she approached, and his face broke into that warm smile again. "Miss Fairweather, I am glad you came." "I hope I will not regret this," she said honestly. He took her bag and stowed it in the back of the wagon, then helped her up onto the seat with a hand that was calloused but gentle. "I will do my best to make sure you do not." They rode out of Kingfisher as the town came fully awake behind them, and Violet did not look back. The road north was rough but well-traveled, cutting through prairie grass that rippled like water in the breeze. The sky was enormous overhead, pale blue and endless, and Violet felt like she could breathe properly for the first time in years. Kieran was quiet for the first few miles, handling the horses with easy competence. Finally he said, "Tell me about yourself, Miss Fairweather. Where are you from originally?" "Missouri," she said. "A small farm outside of Jefferson City. My father grew corn and wheat, and we had a few chickens. It was a good life until my mother died when I was 15. My father never recovered from losing her. He stopped caring about the farm, stopped caring about much of anything. We lost everything 3 years later. He died that same winter, and I had no other family." She paused, surprised at how easily the words came. She had not talked about her past in a long time. "I came to Kingfisher because I heard there was work. I did not understand what kind of work until it was too late." Kieran's jaw tightened. "Men like Crane prey on women in bad situations." "It is not right." "No," she agreed quietly, "but it is the way of things. It does not have to be." He glanced at her. "You can have a different life now if you want it, an honest life." "Why do you care?" The question came out more bluntly than she intended. "You do not know me. Why would you go out of your way to help me?" He was silent for a long moment, his eyes on the road ahead. "My mother was widowed when I was 12, he finally said. "My father died in a cattle stampede, and she was left alone with 3 children and no way to support us. She tried everything to keep us together, but no one would give her a chance. She was a woman alone, and that made her suspect. Eventually, she had to send me and my brothers to work for other families, and she took in laundry and mending. She worked herself to death by the time she was 40. His voice was low and rough. "I swore that if I ever had the means, I would help women who needed a fair chance. So that is what I am doing. I have the means now, and you need the chance." Violet felt tears prick her eyes again. "I am sorry about your mother. She must have been a strong woman." "She was. You remind me of her, actually. That same determined look, like you are holding yourself together through pure stubbornness." Despite everything, Violet laughed. "I suppose that is accurate." The landscape changed as they traveled, the open prairie giving way to rolling hills dotted with trees. They passed other travelers on the road, and Kieran greeted each one with a friendly nod. Violet noticed how people responded to him with respect and warmth. He was clearly well known and well liked in this area. It was late morning when they turned off the main road onto a smaller track that wound through a stand of cottonwood trees. "Almost there," Kieran said. "The ranch is just ahead." They crested a small rise and Violet caught her breath. Below them, nestled in a valley with a creek running through it, was a sprawling ranch. There was a main house built of wood and stone, a large barn, several corrals full of cattle, and scattered outbuildings. It was more substantial than she had expected, a real working operation that spoke of success and hard work. "This is all yours?" she asked, awed. "Built it myself over the past 8 years, Kieran said with quiet pride. "Started with nothing but a dozen head of cattle and a dream. Now I have got over 500 head and contracts with buyers in Kansas City and Chicago. It has been hard work, but it has been worth it." He drove the wagon down the hill and pulled up in front of a small cabin set apart from the main house. It was neat and well-maintained, with a small porch and a window box that currently held nothing but dirt. "This will be yours," he said, jumping down and coming around to help her. "It is not fancy, but it is clean and private. Used to be where my foreman stayed before he moved on last year." Violet stepped inside and found a single room with a bed, a small table and chairs, a wood stove, and a trunk for storage. There was a rag rug on the floor and curtains at the window, faded but clean. It was simple and plain, but it was more than she had dared hope for. It was hers, a space where she would be safe and alone and free to just be herself. "What do you think?" Kieran asked from the doorway. "It is perfect," she said, and meant it. He smiled, clearly pleased. "Good. Get yourself settled in and then come up to the main house. I will show you where you will be working and explain what I need from you." Violet unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses on the pegs by the door and placing her mother's book carefully on the small shelf above the bed. The cabin smelled of wood and sunshine, clean and fresh, and she stood in the middle of it feeling like she had stepped into a dream. But this was real. This was her new life, if she could make it work. She walked up to the main house a short while later, taking in the well-tended yard and the sturdy construction. Kieran was waiting on the porch, and he led her inside to a room that served as an office. There was a large desk piled with papers, shelves full of ledgers, and a filing cabinet that looked like it had never been properly organized. "This is the part of ranching I am worst at," Kieran admitted, gesturing at the chaos. "I can handle the cattle and the land and the men, but all this paperwork defeats me. I need you to make sense of it, keep track of income and expenses, handle correspondence with buyers and suppliers. Can you do that?" Violet looked at the mess and felt a spark of excitement. This was something she could do, something she was good at. I can. It will take some time to get everything organized, but yes, I can handle this. That is exactly what I was hoping to hear. He pulled out the desk chair. This is yours now. I will be in and out, but mostly I will be working outside. If you need anything, just holler. I have got 3 men who work for me full-time. Tom, Jack, and Ricardo. They are good fellows and they will treat you with respect or answer to me. Understood, she nodded, touched by his protectiveness. Understood. He left her to it, and Violet sat down at the desk with a sense of purpose she had not felt in years. She started by sorting the papers into categories. Bills to be paid, invoices to be sent, correspondence requiring responses, and records to be filed. The work was painstaking but satisfying, bringing order to chaos. She lost track of time, absorbed in the task, and was startled when Kieran appeared in the doorway. "Miss Fairweather, it is past noon. You need to eat something." Violet looked up, surprised to find the sun high in the sky. "I did not realize how late it had gotten." "Come on," he said. "I am no great cook, but I can manage bacon and beans." They ate together at the kitchen table, a simple meal that tasted like heaven after years of the greasy food at the Silver Spur. Kieran asked her about her progress, and she found herself talking enthusiastically about the system she was developing, the errors she had already caught in previous records. He listened intently, asking intelligent questions, treating her insights with respect. "You are exactly what I needed," he said when she finished. "I knew I made the right choice." Over the following days, Violet settled into her new life with a sense of relief so profound it was almost painful. She woke each morning in her own cabin, dressed without having to paint her face or style her hair elaborately, and walked to the main house to spend her days immersed in work that engaged her mind. Kieran was an ideal employer, giving her space to work while remaining available if she needed guidance. She met the ranch hands gradually. Tom was an older man with a grizzled beard and a kind smile. Jack was younger, perhaps Violet's age, cheerful and full of stories. Ricardo was quiet and serious, but he tipped his hat respectfully whenever he saw her. True to Kieran's word, all 3 treated her with complete courtesy, and she realized that Kieran must have spoken to them about her background and made it clear that any disrespect would not be tolerated. 2 weeks into her employment, Violet had transformed the office from chaos into organized efficiency. She had created a filing system, caught up on all overdue correspondence, and prepared a detailed accounting of the ranch's finances. When she presented Kieran with a summary of their current financial position, he studied it with obvious amazement. "This is incredible," he said, looking up at her. "I had no idea we were doing this well. You have a real talent for this, Miss Fairweather." She felt herself flush with pleasure at the praise. "Thank you, I enjoy the work." "I am glad." He hesitated, then said, "I hope you are comfortable here, that you feel safe." "I do," she assured him. "More comfortable than I have been in years. You have given me my life back, Mr. Quade." "I cannot thank you enough for that." Something flickered in his gray eyes, an emotion she could not quite name. "You are earning your keep and then some. No thanks necessary." But as the weeks turned into months, Violet became aware of a shift in her feelings toward her employer. She found herself watching for him, listening for his footsteps, looking forward to the meals they shared when he came in from the range. He was unfailingly courteous and respectful, but there was a warmth in his manner that made her heart beat faster. She caught him watching her sometimes with an expression that made her wonder if he felt the same growing attraction. It was autumn now, the Oklahoma heat giving way to cooler temperatures and brilliant blue skies. The ranch was busy with preparations for the fall cattle drive, and Violet was deeply involved in the planning, coordinating supplies and confirming arrangements with buyers in Kansas City. She had proven herself invaluable, and she could see the respect in Kieran's eyes growing deeper every day. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the main house going over the final details for the drive, Kieran set down his papers and looked at her seriously. "Violet, I need to tell you something." She felt her pulse quicken at his use of her first name. "What is it?" "I am going to be gone for almost 3 weeks on this drive. Tom will stay here to look after things, and you will be in charge of the business side. I trust you completely, but I wanted to make sure you are comfortable with that responsibility." "I am," she said. "You can count on me." "I know I can." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "That is not actually what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is that I am going to miss you while I am gone. I have gotten used to seeing you every day, talking with you, having you here. And I realize that is probably inappropriate for me to say, given that I am your employer, but I needed you to know." Violet's breath caught. "It is not inappropriate. I will miss you too." His eyes searched hers. "I brought you here to give you a chance at an honest life. I do not want to complicate that or make you uncomfortable. But I also cannot pretend that my feelings for you are purely professional anymore. You are the smartest, strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever met, and I find myself thinking about you constantly." "Kieran," she said softly, and saying his name felt significant, a crossing of some invisible line. "I feel the same way. I have been trying not to because I did not want to presume or make things difficult, but I cannot help it. You have shown me such kindness, such respect. You have given me back my dignity. How could I not care for you?" He reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle on hers. "When I get back from this drive, I would like to court you properly, if that is something you would want." "I would want that very much," she said, and the smile he gave her was brighter than the setting sun. He left the next morning with Jack and Ricardo, taking 200 head of cattle north to Kansas City. Violet stood on the porch and watched them go, already counting the days until his return. The ranch felt empty without him, but she threw herself into her work, managing correspondence and keeping everything running smoothly in his absence. Tom proved to be a steady presence, checking in with her daily to coordinate the work that needed to be done around the ranch. "Boss spoke highly of you before he left," the old cowhand said one afternoon. "Said you were the best thing that ever happened to this operation." Violet felt herself color. "He is very generous in his praise." Tom chuckled. "He is not a man given to exaggeration. If he says it, he means it. And between you and me, I have never seen him look at a woman the way he looks at you. There is something special there." She could not deny it, and did not want to. She had never expected to find love, not after the years at the Silver Spur had convinced her that she was ruined for anything good. But Kieran had seen past all of that to the person she really was, and he valued her for her mind and her character rather than her appearance. That meant more to her than she could ever express. The weeks passed slowly. Violet kept busy, but at night she lay in her cabin and thought about Kieran, wondering if he was safe, imagining his return. She had never felt this way about anyone before, this combination of respect and attraction and deep affection. It frightened her a little, how much power he had to hurt her if things went wrong. But she was choosing to trust him, to believe in the goodness she saw in him. It was late October when the men finally returned, driving the remaining cattle back to the ranch. Violet heard the commotion from the office and rushed outside to see Kieran dismounting from his horse, dusty and tired but grinning broadly. Their eyes met across the yard, and the connection between them was so strong it felt physical. He strode toward her and she met him halfway, propriety forgotten. "You are back," she said breathlessly. "I am back," he confirmed, "and I have been thinking about you every mile of the way." Over the next few months, Kieran courted her with a sincerity and sweetness that made Violet fall more deeply in love with him every day. He brought her wildflowers picked from the prairie. He took her on rides around the ranch, showing her all his favorite places. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, discovering shared values and dreams. He never pushed her for more than she was ready to give, always respectful of her boundaries, but the attraction between them grew stronger with every passing day. It was Christmas Eve when Kieran took her hand and led her out onto the porch of the main house. The sky was clear and cold, full of stars, and their breath made white clouds in the air. "Violet," he said, turning to face her. "I know we have not been courting for very long, but I am certain of my feelings. I love you. I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" She looked up at him, this good man who had saved her in every way that mattered, and felt her heart overflow. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, tender and passionate, and Violet felt like she had finally come home. They were married in January of 1884 at the small church in Kingfisher, with Tom, Jack, and Ricardo as witnesses. Violet wore a new dress that Kieran had bought for her, simple but beautiful, and she carried a bouquet of winter greenery. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Violet felt a joy so complete it brought tears to her eyes. Kieran moved her belongings into the main house that same day, carrying her carpet bag with exaggerated ceremony that made her laugh. "Welcome home, Mrs. Quade," he said, setting her bag down in the bedroom they would now share. "It feels like I have been waiting my whole life for this," she admitted. He pulled her into his arms. "So have I. I just did not know it until I saw you in that saloon, trying so hard to be someone you were not." Their wedding night was tender and sweet, Kieran patient with her inexperience, making her feel cherished and desired in a way that healed something deep inside her. In his arms, she was not a saloon girl trying to escape her past. She was simply Violet, loved and valued for exactly who she was. Over the next year, they built a life together that was richer than anything Violet had imagined. She continued to manage the business side of the ranch, and her sharp mind and careful management helped them expand their operation significantly. Kieran relied on her judgment completely, often consulting her on major decisions. They were true partners, in business and in life. In the fall of 1884, Violet discovered she was pregnant. Kieran was overjoyed, building a cradle with his own hands and fussing over her like a mother hen. Their son was born in May of 1885, a healthy boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him James, after Kieran's father. Motherhood transformed Violet in ways she had not expected. Holding her son in her arms, she felt a fierce, protective love that made her grateful all over again for the path her life had taken. This child would grow up knowing he was wanted and loved, with two parents who adored him and a secure home. He would never know the desperation and fear that had marked her early years. When James was 6 months old, Violet hired a young woman from town named Sarah to help with the household work and child care, giving her the same kind of chance that Kieran had given her. Sarah was 18 and alone, her family lost to illness, and she was desperate for respectable employment. Violet taught her to read and write in the evenings, passing on the gift of education that her own mother had given her. The ranch continued to prosper. By 1887, they had over 1,000 head of cattle and had purchased additional land to expand their grazing area. Kieran hired more men, and Violet managed the growing complexity of the business with skill and confidence. She had come so far from the frightened, desperate woman who had scrubbed at blood stains in a saloon room, and sometimes she could hardly believe this was her life. In the spring of 1888, Their daughter was born. They named her Rose, and she had Violet's delicate features and Kieran's strong will. James, now almost 3, was fascinated by his baby sister and appointed himself her protector. Watching her children play together, Violet often thought about how different their lives would have been if Kieran had not offered her that job. They would never have existed, and she would probably still be trapped in the Silver Spur, growing harder and more bitter with each passing year. One evening, when Rose was a few months old, Violet and Kieran sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. James was playing in the yard with the ranch dogs while Sarah watched him, and Rose slept peacefully in Violet's arms. It was a moment of perfect contentment, and Violet felt her eyes fill with tears. "What is wrong?" Kieran asked immediately, always attuned to her moods. "Nothing is wrong," she said. "Everything is right. That is what made me cry. I am so happy, Kieran. Sometimes I cannot quite believe this is real." He put his arm around her, pulling her close. "It is real. We built this together, you and me. And we are going to keep building it for the rest of our lives." "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Taking a chance on a saloon girl with a ruined reputation." He turned to look at her, his gray eyes serious. "Never, not for 1 second. You are the best decision I ever made, Violet. You are smart and strong and beautiful, and you have made me happier than I ever thought possible. Your past does not define you. The person you are, the choices you make, the way you love our children and manage our home and help me build this ranch, that is what defines you." She kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. "I love you so much. I love you too. Always." The years passed in a blur of hard work and deep happiness. The ranch became one of the most successful operations in the Oklahoma Territory, known for quality cattle and fair dealing. Violet's business acumen was a major factor in that success, and Kieran never hesitated to give her credit. She became well respected in Kingfisher, her past forgotten by most, and forgiven by those who remembered. She was Mrs. Quade now, the smart, capable wife of a successful rancher, and she had earned that respect through her own merit. In 1890, they had another son, whom they named Thomas after the loyal ranch hand who had become like family. And in 1893, their youngest daughter, Grace, was born. Their house was full of noise and laughter, and Violet sometimes had to pinch herself to believe it was all real. James grew into a responsible young man who loved ranching as much as his father did. Rose was clever and bookish, reminding Violet of herself at that age. Thomas was adventurous and constantly getting into mischief. Grace was the baby, sweet and gentle, loved by everyone. Kieran aged well, his hair going silver at the temples but his gray eyes still clear and sharp. He was a respected figure in the community, known for his fairness and integrity. He and Violet were seen as a model couple, their partnership obvious to everyone who knew them. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1894, Kieran took Violet back to Kingfisher for a special dinner at the hotel restaurant, a far cry from the Silver Spur Saloon where they had first met. As they ate and talked and laughed together, Violet thought about that frightened young woman scrubbing at blood stains, convinced her life was over before it had really begun. "What are you thinking about?" Kieran asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. "About how you saved me," she said honestly. "About how different my life would be if you had not offered me that job." He shook his head. "I did not save you, Violet. I just gave you an opportunity. You are the one who took it and made something of it. You saved yourself." "Maybe," she allowed. "But I could not have done it without you. You saw me when no one else did. You treated me with dignity when everyone else saw only what I had been forced to become. That changed everything." "You were always worthy of dignity," he said firmly. Always. I just recognized what was already there. After dinner, they walked slowly back to the livery stable where their wagon waited. They passed the silver spur, and Violet paused to look at it. The paint was peeling now, and it looked shabbier than she remembered. A few half-hearted notes drifted out from the piano inside. Any regrets? Kieran asked quietly. She turned to him, this man who had given her everything, and smiled. Not a single one. That place was never really me. This life with you, our children, our ranch, that is who I truly am. You helped me find myself. He kissed her there on the street, not caring who saw, and Violet kissed him back with all the love and passion that 10 years of marriage had only deepened. They were partners, lovers, best friends. They had built something real and lasting together, a life of purpose and dignity and love. As they drove home under the stars, Violet thought about all the girls still trapped in places like the Silver Spur, dreaming of escape. She thought about how easy it would be to stay trapped, to believe the lies that society told about fallen women, to accept that some mistakes could never be overcome. But she was living proof that change was possible, that one chance, one kind person, one moment of courage could alter the entire trajectory of a life. When they arrived home, their children rushed out to greet them, James scooping up little Grace while Rose and Thomas talked over each other in their excitement to share what had happened while their parents were gone. Sarah waved from the doorway, smiling at the chaos. Kieran looked at Violet over the heads of their children, and the expression in his eyes made her heart swell. Love, pride, contentment, joy. Everything she had ever wanted was right here in this moment, in this life they had created together. That night, after the children were in bed, Violet and Kieran sat in their bedroom and talked about the future. They wanted to expand the ranch further, maybe add some horses to their operation. They talked about James's education, about whether to send him to college or let him learn ranching from his father. They discussed Rose's obvious intelligence and how to nurture it in a world that often had limited expectations for women. She is like you, Kieran said, smart and determined. She will do great things. I hope all our children will, Violet said. I want them to know they can be anything they want to be, that their circumstances do not have to limit them. They will know, Kieran promised. We will make sure they know. Just like I made sure you knew that day in the saloon. Violet leaned her head on his shoulder, grateful beyond words for this life, this love, this second chance. Tell me again, she said softly. Tell me what you saw in me that day. He wrapped his arm around her. I saw a woman who did not belong where she was. I saw intelligence in your eyes and dignity in the way you carried yourself despite everything. I saw someone who was fighting to hold on to who she really was, even when the world was trying to tell her she was someone else. I saw possibility and strength and grace. I saw you, Violet, the real you, and I knew I wanted to give you a chance to be that person fully. I love you, she whispered. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for everything. Thank you for taking the chance, he replied. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for building this life with me. The years continued to unfold with their share of challenges and triumphs. There were hard winters and dry summers, market fluctuations and difficult decisions. But through it all, Violet and Kieran faced everything together, their partnership growing stronger with each passing season. In 1895, the Oklahoma Territory was moving toward statehood, and there was excitement in the air about the changes coming. Kieran became involved in local politics, advocating for fair treatment of small ranchers and pushing for better schools and infrastructure. Violet worked behind the scenes, writing letters and organizing meetings, her sharp political instincts proving as valuable as her business sense. James, at 10 years old, was already working alongside his father, learning everything about ranching. He had Kieran's calm competence and Violet's quick mind, and it was clear he would be ready to take over the operation someday. Rose, at 7, was reading at a level far beyond her years and constantly asking questions about everything. Thomas, at 5, was as wild as the prairie itself, but with a good heart. And Grace, at 2, was the darling of the family, bringing smiles to everyone's faces. One day in the spring of 1896, a woman arrived at the ranch asking for Violet. She was young, maybe 20, with desperate eyes and a bruised face. "I heard you used to work at the Silver Spur," she said quietly. "I heard you got out. I was hoping maybe you could help me do the same." Violet looked at this girl who reminded her so much of her younger self and felt her heart break and swell at the same time. "Come inside," she said. "Let us talk." The girl's name was Emma, and her story was heartbreakingly familiar. She had no family, no education, no options. Samuel Crane had her trapped with debt and threats, and she saw no way out. Violet listened to it all, remembering how it felt to be that hopeless. When Emma finished, Violet said, "I will help you. We will find you work here on the ranch or in town, something respectable. And if Crane comes looking for you, my husband and I will deal with him. You do not have to go back there." Relief flooded Emma's face and tears spilled down her cheeks. "Why would you do this for me? You do not know me." "Because someone did it for me once," Violet said simply. "And now I am paying it forward." Emma became part of their household, learning household management and eventually taking over much of that work from Sarah, who had married one of the ranch hands the year before and moved into her own cabin on the property. Emma flourished under Violet's mentorship, her confidence growing as she discovered her own worth. True to his word, when Samuel Crane came looking for Emma, Kieran met him at the property line with several armed ranch hands and made it clear that Emma was under their protection. Crane tried to bluster and threaten, but he was no match for Kieran's quiet authority and the obvious support of the community. He left and never returned. Watching Emma blossom into a confident, capable woman, Violet felt a deep satisfaction. She had not just escaped her own past. She was helping others escape theirs. It gave her life an even deeper meaning. In 1899, Emma married Jack, who had been working for Kieran for over 15 years now and was the foreman of the ranch. It was a happy wedding, and Violet stood up as Emma's matron of honor, feeling like a proud mother watching her daughter marry. The turn of the century brought changes to the Oklahoma Territory. There was talk of statehood becoming a reality soon, and the rough frontier quality of the area was giving way to more settled civilization. Kingfisher was growing into a real town with schools and churches and businesses. The Wild West era was fading into memory. But the Quad Ranch thrived, a testament to hard work, smart management, and the partnership between Kieran and Violet. They were respected throughout the region, known for their integrity and generosity. Violet served on the board of the new school and was instrumental in getting a library established in town. She had come full circle, from a desperate girl with no education to a woman who ensured others had access to learning. In 1902, their oldest son James, now 17, met a girl named Lucy at a church social. She was the daughter of a neighboring rancher, and it was clear from the start that James was smitten. Watching her son court Lucy with all the earnest sincerity of young love, Violet was reminded of her own courtship with Kieran. James had learned from his father how to treat women with respect and kindness, and Lucy blossomed under his attention. Rose, at 14, announced her intention to become a teacher. Violet could not have been prouder. Her daughter was brilliant and passionate about education, determined to make a difference in the world. Kieran agreed to send her to a teacher's college when she was old enough, an investment in their daughter's future that Violet knew her own parents could never have afforded. Thomas, at 12, was showing an interest in horses, and Kieran began teaching him about horse breeding and training. Grace, at 9, was artistic, always drawing or painting everything she saw. Each child was unique, developing their own interests and personalities, and Violet loved watching them grow. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1904, Kieran surprised Violet with a trip to Kansas City. It was her first time in a big city, and she was awed by the buildings and crowds and endless activity. But what touched her most was when Kieran took her to a jeweler and had a necklace made for her, a simple gold chain with a small diamond pendant. "This represents everything we have built together," he said as he fastened it around her neck. 20 years of love and partnership. You are my best friend, my lover, my business partner, the mother of my children. You are everything to me, Violet." She turned to face him, seeing the gray in his hair and the lines around his eyes, marks of a life well lived. He was 51 now and she was 43, and they had lived a lifetime together already. "You gave me everything," she said. "A home, a family, dignity, purpose, love. I would not be who I am without you. We made each other who we are," he corrected gently. "That is what partnership means." When they returned home, they found that James and Lucy had gotten engaged. The wedding was planned for the following spring, and the whole ranch buzzed with excitement. Violet threw herself into the preparations, determined to give her son and future daughter-in-law a beautiful celebration. The wedding in May of 1905 was lovely, held at the ranch under the big oak tree by the creek. Lucy looked beautiful in white, and James looked so handsome and grown up that Violet had to fight back tears. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Kieran squeezed Violet's hand, and she knew he was thinking the same thing she was. They had raised a good man who would build a good life with a good woman. James and Lucy moved into the foreman's cabin, which Tom had vacated when he finally retired to live with his daughter in town. James was ready to take on more responsibility in running the ranch, and Kieran was happy to begin transitioning some of his duties to his capable son. The years passed with their steady rhythm of work and family and love. Rose went off to Teachers College in 1908 and returned 2 years later with her teaching certificate, taking a position at the Kingfisher school. Thomas, showing a real gift with horses, began breeding and training quarter horses that became sought after throughout the territory. Grace, artistic and dreamy, was still finding her way, but Violet had no doubt she would find something she was passionate about. In 1907, Oklahoma achieved statehood, and there were celebrations throughout the new state. Violet and Kieran attended the festivities in Kingfisher, feeling like they had been part of building something bigger than themselves. They had helped civilize the frontier, turning wild prairie into productive ranches and rough settlements into thriving towns. James and Lucy welcomed their first child in 1906, a son they named Kieran after his grandfather. Holding her grandson, Violet felt the circle of life complete itself. She was a grandmother now, and this baby represented the future, a future she had helped create through her choices and her courage all those years ago. In 1911, on a warm summer evening, Violet and Kieran sat on their porch watching the sunset as they had done thousands of times before. Their children were grown or nearly so. The ranch was thriving, and they had grandchildren now. It had been 27 years since that morning when Violet had taken a chance on a stranger's offer and left the Silver Spur forever. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if I had not come into the saloon that night?" Kieran asked, as if reading her thoughts. "Sometimes," Violet admitted, "but not often. This life feels so inevitable now, like it was always meant to be this way, but I know how lucky I was." How lucky I am." "We are both lucky," Kieran said. "I found my perfect partner that night. You made me a better man, Violet. You made my life complete." She leaned into him, comfortable and content. "We saved each other, I think. You gave me the chance to save myself, and in doing so, you found the partner you needed. We were meant to find each other." "I believe that," he agreed. "I believe fate brought us together." As darkness fell and the stars came out, Violet thought about the long road she had traveled from that desperate girl in a saloon to this woman surrounded by love and purpose. She thought about Emma and the other women she had helped over the years, passing on the gift that Kieran had given her. She thought about her children and grandchildren, the legacy of love and integrity they would carry forward. And she thought about dignity, that simple word that encompassed so much. Kieran had given her back her dignity by seeing her as a whole person rather than just her circumstances. And she had honored that gift by living a life of purpose and meaning, by helping others, by building something lasting and good. The cowboy had given the saloon girl a job with dignity, but together they had created so much more. They had built a love story for the ages, a partnership that had withstood every challenge, a family that would carry their values into the future. They had proved that where you came from mattered less than where you were going, and that one moment of compassion could change the entire trajectory of a life. As they sat together in the darkness, hands clasped, Violet felt a peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. This was what happiness looked like. Not perfection, but a life lived with purpose and love. Not an escape from the past, but a transformation of it. Not forgetting where she came from, but using that experience to help others. "Thank you," she whispered to Kieran, the words encompassing 27 years of gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered back, and she knew he understood. They had saved each other, and in doing so, they had created something beautiful that would endure long after they were gone. In 1915, at Violet's 54th birthday celebration, surrounded by children and grandchildren and friends, she looked around at all the faces she loved and felt overwhelmed with joy. Rose was there with her new husband, a fellow teacher she had married the year before. Thomas had brought his wife, a rancher's daughter who shared his love of horses. Grace, now 22, had discovered a talent for photography and was beginning to make a name for herself with her stunning images of Oklahoma landscapes. James and Lucy's children ran around the yard, their laughter filling the air. Kieran, now 62, stood beside her, his arm around her waist. They had aged together, weathering life's storms side by side, and she loved him more deeply now than she ever thought possible. Their love had not dimmed with time. It had deepened and matured into something solid and unshakable. "Happy birthday, my love," Kieran said, kissing her cheek. "Happy life," she replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The party continued late into the evening, full of food and music and storytelling. Violet found herself telling Emma's daughters, now teenagers, about the importance of education and independence, about knowing their worth and never settling for less than they deserved. She saw the girls' eyes light up with possibility, and she knew she was planting seeds that would bear fruit in their futures. Later, when the guests had gone home and the children had retired to their own homes and cabins, Violet and Kieran walked down to the creek, following a path they had walked countless times over the years. The moon was full, reflecting off the water, and the night was alive with the sounds of crickets and frogs. "We have had a good life," Kieran said, pulling her close. "The best life," Violet agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." "What do you dream about now?" he asked curiously. She thought about it. "I dream about grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I dream about the ranch continuing to thrive for generations. I dream about dying peacefully in my sleep, many years from now with you beside me." She looked up at him. "What do you dream about?" "The same things," he said softly. "Growing old with you, watching our family grow, leaving a legacy of love and integrity. I dream about what I have always dreamed about since that day I met you, a life lived with purpose alongside the woman I love." They stood by the creek for a long time, holding each other, two people who had found their way through the darkness into the light. Violet thought about the girl she had been, scared and trapped and hopeless. That girl was still part of her, but she had been transformed by love and opportunity, and her own courage into someone stronger and wiser. The journey from the Silver Spur to this moment had been long and sometimes difficult, but she would not change a single step of it. Every hardship had taught her something, every challenge had made her stronger, and every moment with Kieran had been a gift beyond price. As they walked back to the house together, Violet knew that this was what a love story really looked like. Not a fairy tale with a perfect beginning and instant happiness, but a true partnership built over years of shared work and mutual respect. Not a rescue, but a joining of two people who made each other better. Not an escape from the past, but a transformation of it into something beautiful. The cowboy had given the saloon girl more than a job with dignity. He had given her a chance to become who she was always meant to be. And together, they had created a love that would echo through generations, a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and seeing the worth in another human being. And as Violet climbed into bed that night, Kieran's arms around her, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Home. Loved. Free. Complete. The story of the saloon girl who wanted out, and the cowboy who gave her dignity, had become the story of a remarkable partnership, a thriving family, and a love that had transformed two lives into something extraordinary. And it was a story that would continue, passed down through their children and grandchildren, a reminder that it is never too late to change your life, and that sometimes all it takes is one person who sees your true worth to help you become everything you were meant to be.